There are so many miracles and moments that make little markers in everyone's life. I'm super excited for you to hear from some of my dear friends and family today. And by the way, that's you too. I'm your host, Amber Parker, and welcome to Marker37 Podcast. Why, hello, everybody, and welcome to Marker37 Podcast. We are so thankful that you tune in to this podcast. I'm your host, Amber Parker. I am a mom of two beautiful babies. I am married to my soulmate, Josh, and this episode is really going to just simply be an introduction. Who am I? Why did I start this podcast? And hopefully you'll stick around and we can have lots of conversations. So let's dive in. I am Amber. I grew up in Flint, Michigan, and growing up, I always saw things differently. I remember being young. I grew up and I'm the youngest of, I always have to count actually. There was 5 siblings and then we adopted 2 more and then mom and dad. So there was 9 of us. And I was the youngest. And so I either learned from all the mistakes of my siblings or I learned the really hard way. And so growing up, I always saw things differently. I remember being little. I don't remember a lot of my childhood, and maybe that's some childhood trauma. I don't know, or things that I've gone through that I really will be super vulnerable with you in this podcast. This is probably, many of you guys follow me on social media, and while I really do have an incredibly amazing, beautiful life, there's so much more depth to me and to so many of my friends that are also going to be on this podcast. And so while I'm very much, you'll see all sides of me on social media, I'm really, really, really excited to just have this personal connection on the podcast. And so, again, going back to when I was little, I remember seeing things differently, growing up in the house that we grew up in, which I'll talk more about little moments throughout my life, but in a 3-bedroom home until my dad built the addition with all 9 of us. And I remember working hard, just always having to work hard for what I wanted, but being willing. I was always willing to work hard. I was always willing to do the job really that was in front of me, regardless of how difficult it seemed. I was always willing to try. And so growing up, I always wanted to, have a big family. I wanted to do something that just I could get my hands. I love work. I don't know. I really love work. And so I always knew that I didn't want to be a stay-at-home mom, but that I wanted to be a working stay-at-home mom. And you'll hear me talk about that a lot. But gosh, what else? Let's see. I feel like there's a lot of moments that I could talk about, but yeah, I grew up in Flint, Michigan, born and raised LDS. My parents were converts, and so we got into the religion that way. And I remember, and again, I'm so excited for all the episodes that are coming because really, there's so many stories that I know I'm not alone in, but also that really have produced some incredible, incredible moments in my life, and I'm excited to share those with you guys. But outside of that, growing up, I always worked hard. 14 years old, I had my first job at Big Boy Restaurant. I was a hostess and I made pretty good money. And then 16, I always worked. My senior year, I remember having a couple jobs and only having 2 or 3 classes in school. And so I would work. I'd rather work. I really loved making money, but also because of the choices that it gave me to live life. And so, again, never afraid of work. Then graduated, and once I graduated, and I'm skipping a lot, but I'll dive into more deeper of different sections in different episodes, but this is really just an intro, and I may not even use this. I have no idea, but we're just jumping in. So after high school, I remember packing my stuff up in about 4 days, and I left everything that I knew. I left my high school boyfriend, my best friends, my home, my work, everything. I left it all. And my dad packed our stuff and we went to Utah. And I moved here to St. George, which is actually where I reside now in southern Utah. And packed our stuff and came out here to Utah. And when we were out here, I was like, you know what? Freedom. I'm not trapped by mom and dad. And so I had a little rebellious stage. And again, I'll get into these little moments in different episodes, but gosh, what else happened? So yeah, I remember moving out here to Utah and really just being like, let me get into some trouble. Let me let me be of the world. And very much so I did. That was the season of my life. And, but I'm grateful for every season. I'm grateful for how I was raised. I'm grateful for the hardships. I'm grateful for the experiences that I had as a teen. I'm grateful that I worked so hard. I am so grateful for the life that I have. And, my hope is that as you listen to some of these stories and things, you will see that God's not done with you yet, that there's so much more available and waiting for you. And we're gonna shed some tears. We're gonna laugh. We're gonna have fun. But most importantly, we're gonna get to know each other. So after high school, when I moved out to Utah, I got a job here working at Target, and loved that job. And then my sister and my family really wanted me to move to northern Utah. They wanted me to move to Provo, Utah. And I was like, I'm never moving to that city. And so I moved to that city. My sister got me a job. I lasted 2 weeks, and it was great, but it really wasn't in that season for me. It just wasn't the right fit, and that's okay because God knew. And so I worked at that job for about 2 weeks. It was the shortest job I've ever worked in my life. And I went back to Target, and that's where I met my husband. Josh was actually at Target. Yes, in Orem, Utah, at that Target is where I met my husband. And we always like to share a funny story, but actually he's going to be on one of these podcast episodes. Really excited for you guys to get to know my husband. He is an incredible man of God, and amazing chef, gives the best hugs. And I just feel so blessed to be his wife, and grateful that God knew exactly where my feet needed to be in those seasons. So that way it could change the whole trajectory of my life. But so met my husband at Target, and we started dating 4 days later. Actually, I don't want to give too much away, but 4 days later we go to Thanksgiving and I meet his family, and I just knew that he was the one. I knew in that moment that this guy was my soulmate. This was the one for me. And that seems a little wild and crazy, but I believe in love at first sight. So I am definitely here for the miraculous stories. And we're going to hear from some of my friends who have also had incredible marriages, long-term marriages, on tips on marriages, how they keep their marriage alive, and so much more. But so we started dating, 11 months later married, and that was 18 years ago. And so I love marriage. I love, period. And I'm excited to hear and share some of the things that me and Josh do, and how we've been able to really truly enjoy being married. And so whether you are married, you're not married, or maybe you know somebody, I just hope that this podcast and any one of our episodes can just resonate with you and give you the opportunity to get to know us, but also get to know just that miracles do still happen, and life is still good. So with that being said, let's see, after we got married, we had kids, and I always knew that I wanted to be a hairstylist, and I'm skipping a lot of in-betweens, but I always wanted to be a hairstylist when I was little. I love to use my hands. I love to be creative. I love to create, period. It's just the artist in me. And so I started doing hair as a very young age, and end up going to nail school, getting a little scholarship to go to hair school, went to hair school, started flipping salons, loved doing hair, because my favorite part about being a hairstylist was the transformation. People could come into my chair and feel one way. They could leave feeling another way. And I got to be a part of that. But it's really the gift of seeing the joy on their face when they would leave. And still to this day, I miss doing hair. Gosh, I'm getting emotional. But just my clients, they really grew up with me. And if you are a stylist, you know what I'm talking about. But it is such a gift to have that kind of a trade. And I swear I was going to be 80 years old and on stage still and cutting hair, but God had other plans, and I'm so grateful for that, or we wouldn't be right here today. So once I started doing hair, I remember feeling like it was going to last forever, but never being able to see the long-term vision of it. And again, glad God had other plans, but I have 2 beautiful babies. Me and Josh got pregnant pretty quick after we got married again, then dove into hair and wanted to do hair because I could do it at home with my kids. And so it was a great opportunity for, again, going back to that working stay-at-home mom, that would give me that option. But now what do I do? For the last 12 years, I've been in marketing and sales, and me and my husband both work remotely with our 2 kids. We've done a little homeschool. We've done a little travel the country. We've done a little bit of everything. And so we're excited. We're excited that you're here again. I don't even know why God put this on my heart, but he did. He said, do a podcast. And so here we are. And let me talk a little bit about that, how this came about, why we're doing this stinking podcast. So let's talk about a few years ago. A few years ago when we were traveling in the RV with our 2 kids, so many of my friends were like, you should document this journey. You should YouTube it. You should do all these things. And while that would be really, really, really fun, me and my husband work on social media, so it's not unfamiliar to us. It would be really fun. And we bought all the equipment. We did the drone. We did the whole 9 yards. And it wasn't it. We didn't want to do that. We just wanted to be present with our family. And so, but as we were traveling and I was just using our normal social media platforms, documenting our journey, people started asking me, when are you going to do a podcast? And I was like, well, I don't have any desire to do a podcast. I don't even listen to podcasts. And I had a couple friends really just prophesy over my life and say, you need to use your voice for this. There's so much out there. And I'm like, what am I going to say that people are going to want to listen to? What is so valuable that I've gone through or special about me that gives me this credential to say, yeah, go start a podcast? No, like I really didn't have that, but it just kept pressing on my heart. It kept pressing on my heart. It kept pressing on my heart. And every time I would dive into my Bible, I would hear again and again something else about God's going to use you. There are just so many things. One day we'll dive into some of my journals and all the things, but it really, people just started just asking, like, when are you going to do it? And I was like, nope, I'm good. Nope, I'm good. Nope, I'm good. Nope, I'm good. And I have in my notes right here, and I haven't reread this since I wrote it. So this is the first time I'm reading it. So bear with me if I get emotional. And, but I document everything. When I hear something or I feel like I'm I call it wrestle till I win, but, or wrestle until I weep. And as I'm diving into this, and really wrestling day after day after day as to why this podcast, why this season. And it's been 3 years of me documenting things about this before I finally just press play. And I'm nervous, I'm excited, but here we go. And so on 10/8/21, this was in October, and I wrote, a day that I could have met Jesus. One night during this 21-day sickness, and I remember this vividly, we were in Wyoming in the RV, and I was so sick. One night during this 21-day sickness, and even being paralyzed for 24 hours with no answers but a solid cry to the Lord for healing, I had no idea this would be one of the many times when I have heard, I'm not done. And I actually have a tattoo on my wrist that is to be continued. When God really gave this to me was about 4 years ago. Actually today or yesterday, I think it popped up, which is wild. Wow. But I have just 3 dots and it just says to be continued. I'm not done. And so I am getting so emotional over this. But I have faith and I'm not done, and that my faith will heal me. And I remember vividly hearing this audible voice saying, your faith will heal you. Your faith will heal you. And I remember just staring out the window, just crying and being like, this is the worst pain I've ever been in my life. That encounter was so insane. I have never been through anything. And the best way that I can describe it is it felt like there was glass, just shards going down my spine, ripping from the lower of my back all the way up to my spine, up to my neck, up to the cranial of my freaking top of the head. It was so awful. And gosh, there's so much more to that, but let's keep reading. I heard, I'm not done, and I have faith, and my faith will heal me. And took on the fight of my life. The next 2 years have felt like a whirlwind, not knowing where my life was going or being in full surrender to the Lord. It's been beautiful to see his promise still stands, that I'm not done. Here I am to the date. I have overcome many obstacles and hardships and days that I want to throw in the towel, and so many visions and signs and callings on my life to bless others. But I had faith. And today I published my first journal. This was not on, this was 10/8/23, excuse me. I published my first journal that I absolutely had zero desire to do. My desire wasn't a journal. My desire was to transform and enrich women to be right where they are. Be bold, be brave, be happy, be sad, but be grateful there is breath in your lungs. Breakthroughs are worth it, sis. Send it. And I pray every day for 2 years, and even before that, oh Lord, that you would bless me indeed, that you would enlarge my territory, that your hand would be with me and keep me from evil. And he granted me exactly that. See, sis, he's got so much more for you to do and to be, so send it. Who cares what other people think? Care what he thinks. He's the maker of our markers, and he makes the mountains move, so let him. The more you've been through, the more you can relate, and the more you can relate, the more you can build a relationship, and the more relationships you build, the more impact to make, the more impact you make, the more people come to Christ, and it's a full circle. I saw that as I lean into this calling, this could absolutely crush me. I could hear from people that really it could be so critical of the things that we're doing, but here I am, full surrender, coming soon, podcast, Marker 37, miracles, marriage, moments, and so much more. I'm absolutely terrified. In December, I wrote, I'm writing the intro to my podcast, and I'm not sure if that's an answer from the Lord or if it was an intentional with the encounter, because it was so funny. I wrote like pausecast, like it was pausecast, and my friend was like, you spelled that wrong. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so funny. Maybe it's because it's going to be positive. I don't know. But anyways, this has really been on my heart, like I said, for the last 3 years. And friends have mentioned, when are you going to do it? And so I set a deadline. And I'm finding joy again, even in this process of even just beginning this podcast. Like I haven't even published an episode yet, and I'm finding so much joy that hasn't been there for a really long time. And I think this joy of the unknown, of what this is where it's going to go, who it's going to impact. But even if it's just one person, even if my kids just listen to this when they're older, and this is how the life that we're living right now, it's just a little wild, but I believe and I know that there is a reason for this. And so this is my full surrender. Let's do this. And I don't know if this is the preview to episode 1, if this is the episode 1, if this is ever even going to be used, but my gosh, I feel so grateful. And I thank God every single day for every marker that he's made in my life that has changed the trajectory of where we're going and what we're doing. And life is good, really good. Gosh, I'm excited to be here. All right, now my husband's not here now. I don't know how to end this. I think I just pressed stop recording.